Picture this. It's London, winter, 1720. You've got these fog-drenched alleyways, and you're in a deeply, deeply moralistic society where a charge of blasphemy could literally land you in a prison cell. Yet, right at that very moment, behind locked doors, the absolutely most powerful men in the British Empire were gathering in secret to break every single rule. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the stunning, highly secretive, and notoriously scandalous world of the Hellfire Clubs.
Now, for basically 3 centuries, this one single question has fueled massive, sprawling conspiracy theories. Just think about it for a second. You have literal prime ministers, brilliant philosophers, and powerful lords gathering in ruined abbeys and underground caves. They're wearing white monk robes, chanting in Latin, and supposedly leaving an empty chair at their gambling tables specifically for Satan himself. Naturally, the public was terrified. The king even issued a royal proclamation against them. So we have to ask, were these elite men actually conjuring the occult?
Well, short answer, no. No, they weren't. Actually, scratch the ghost stories, because as we're going to see, the truth was actually so much more dangerous than any supernatural myth. This whole thing wasn't about the occult at all. It was about raw, unfiltered geopolitical power. It was about elite impunity and what really happens when the men who write the laws decide that they are completely, absolutely exempt from them.
All right, let's get into part 1, the elite's secret cult, an 18th century theatrical sin. So this entire crazy concept actually kicks off with a self-destructive, wildly wealthy nobleman named the Duke of Wharton back in 1720s London. But it wasn't until the idea crossed the sea to Ireland that the myth grew into something spectacular. Up on Montpelier Hill, inside this ruined stone hunting lodge built right over a prehistoric tomb, the local villagers started whispering. They said the members always left a chair empty for the devil, that guests were spotted with cloven hooves, and that rooms would suddenly erupt in supernatural blue flames.
But let's be real for a second and strip away that folklore, because the reality is just fascinating. Those blue flames and the massive fire that eventually reduced that Irish lodge to a blackened shell, yeah, that wasn't hellfire. It was scalthine. This was a completely bizarre, incredibly potent drink made of whiskey and butter that the members intentionally set on fire before downing it. So the lodge didn't burn down because of some demonic pact. It burned down because incredibly drunk aristocrats were literally playing with flaming whiskey inside a tiny stone room.
Moving on to part 2, the architecture of dark transgression, featuring Sir Francis Dashwood and the Caves. Fast forward to the 1750s. Enter a man named Sir Francis Dashwood. This guy wasn't just anybody. He was the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He literally ran Britain's finances, and he decides to take this secret club concept to a deeply theatrical level. At the ruined Medmenham Abbey, his so-called Order of the Friars dressed up in white monk robes, drank heavily, and adopted a very specific motto, face sick of draws, do what thou wilt. It was a calculated, very deliberate mockery of authority, but Dashwood, he wanted to go deeper, literally. On his massive estate at West Wycombe, Dashwood commissioned the excavation of an enormous network of tunnels, carved directly into a solid chalk hillside. Imagine this. Members would descend into a pitch-black, quarter-mile labyrinth. Deep underground, they'd have to cross a narrow subterranean stream that Dashwood super dramatically named the River Styx, representing the boundary to the underworld. And finally, they would arrive at the inner temple. This was a massive circular chamber hidden deep inside the earth, fully decked out with fireplaces and wine cellars for their secret banquets. Which brings us to part 3, the Blackmail Brotherhood, a shadow government in robes.
Now, underneath all the theatrics and the fake hellfire, this was actually an architecture of absolute political power. Just think about who was actually sitting around these underground tables. We've got Dashwood running the economy, radical media mogul and politician John Wilkes, and get this, even American founding father Benjamin Franklin. This was quite literally a shadow government, where prime ministers and diplomats could meet entirely off the record, completely shielded from Parliament and the king.
Okay, quick aside here, because you are going to love this totally unexpected fact. One of the highest-ranking members of this club was the First Lord of the Admiralty, the Earl of Sandwich. And this guy was so incredibly addicted to the underground gambling tables that he absolutely refused to leave his seat to have a formal meal. Instead, he just ordered his servants to slap some meat between 2 slices of bread so he could eat with one hand and keep playing cards with the other. Yes, you heard that right. This highly secretive, scandalous society literally invented the sandwich. So you might be wondering, why all the elaborate robes and mock rituals if this was basically just a high-stakes political networking club? Well, it was a genius system of mutual blackmail. Think about it. If you're a high-profile politician and you see your biggest rival dressed as a monk, mocking the church, and engaging in massive debauchery, you instantly have leverage. Engaging in scandalous activities was literally the price of admission. If everyone has dirt on everyone else, nobody talks. It guaranteed absolute loyalty and total discretion in an era where your public reputation was everything.
Part 4. Exploitation in the Shadows. The dark reality of aristocratic impunity. If we strip away all the glamorous Hollywood-style legends, we are left with a very, very dark reality. It's a known fact the club had women present during these gatherings, whom they called nuns. Now, for centuries, the myth was that these were rebellious, wealthy, aristocratic women in on the joke, but the historical reality is much harsher. Modern historians agree they were largely lower-class women brought in from the streets. In an era where a wealthy lord faced zero legal consequences, these underground caves were basically spaces of structural exploitation, protected entirely by elite impunity.
And the craziest part? Dashwood's own estate was the ultimate physical metaphor for this impunity. High up on the hill, directly above the underground caves, Dashwood rebuilt the Church of St. Lawrence, and he topped it with this massive golden ball that you can still see today. So you literally have the church and heaven shining brightly above ground, and the secret, sinful inner temple hidden deep below ground in the dark. And right there in the middle was Dashwood, freely moving between both worlds, proving he felt completely exempt from the rules of both God and society.
Part 5. Exposure, Scandal, and Collapse. Destroyed by the printing press.
Because, every secret empire eventually fractures. And the downfall of this one? It didn't come from divine lightning or a dramatic police raid, it came from the printing press. In 1763, club member John Wilkes used his newspaper to aggressively attack the king. In retaliation, his own clubmate, the Earl of Sandwich, stood right up in the House of Lords and read aloud a highly illegal pornographic poem that Wilkes had written specifically for the club. Sandwich literally weaponized their own secrets to destroy his rival. Under that kind of intense, blinding public spotlight, the Brotherhood simply dissolved.
And before it's all over, we have this wildly bizarre final act. Before the club's steward, Paul Whitehead, died in 1774, he systematically burned nearly all of the club's official records. He literally wiped the true, complete history from the earth forever. And in his will, Whitehead requested that his heart be removed, preserved in an urn, and placed inside a mausoleum on Dashwood's estate. It just sat there for over a century, a silent, weirdly theatrical guardian of the secrets he took to the grave.
So wrapping this all up, the Hellfire Clubs were never really about worshiping Satan. Not at all. They were about the intoxicating thrill of being completely untouchable. These men used scandal as a smokescreen to conduct the real, gritty business of the empire in secret, bound tightly together by mutual blackmail. Which leaves us with a fascinating and honestly deeply unsettling thought. If this is the incredibly elaborate, theatrical length that the 18th century elite went to for unmonitored power, what are today's elite doing when the cameras are turned off? Keep questioning, keep digging, and thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer.